right, we got 4 more matches in the books, but let's start with Nigeria, who we just saw. A team that is absolutely loaded offensively. They've got so many weapons, yet they seem to switch off at times. It's always a nail-biter towards the end. Why do you think that has been recently?
You know, it's so difficult to say with Nigeria. Perhaps only those who are within the national team setup can say with absolute certainty. But from the outside, what I've said about Nigeria recently is that they seem to lack a certain synergy between the players. Despite the quality, they don't seem to be able to work together well enough to bring the best out of one another. And perhaps there's an overall identity issue, a philosophical issue, because it's difficult to say what Nigeria's style is. It's difficult to say what the approach is going to be. How do they score goals? And none of these ideas, none of these responses are consistent over different games, different competitions, and so on and so forth. And so there seems to be this over-reliance on this individual magic, which they have obviously in droves. But, when you're not playing together and, each player, these talented players don't necessarily show up, then you have an issue. But when you have an identity and you have synergy and you have teamwork, players can lift each other and there can be a consistency over a course of a period of time. And I think that's perhaps what's lacking for them.
You did see some good performances individually, though, from Nigeria in this game today. Mbizo, I enjoyed watching the game. I thought they were not at their very best, certainly not as a team, but you saw Victor Osimhen taking 7 shots in this game, which was quite remarkable. It's the first time an individual has taken 7 shots in a game since 2010 for Nigeria in the African Cup of Nations. So that's a positive sign. But Eric Schell, obviously, he has a life of luxury with all these individual talents, these superstars. What kind of identity is he aiming for? Where do you see the manager's print on this team?
Well, and to be fair to him, I have seen some changes in the Nigerian national team. Beforehand, I thought that they were a little bit too pragmatic. I thought that they relied too frequently on the long ball and guys chasing it down, 50-50 challenges. And I thought they had too much quality to be playing in that fashion. And I think Eric Schell has begun to change that a little bit. I think they're putting the ball down and playing some more. But again, I just don't see a consistent and identifiable philosophy and approach that they use in each of their games, in each competition. But again, I don't think that's all down to him. I think that the NFF shares some responsibility there and the relevant football authorities for developing football in the nation, because again, it seems all very accidental. These fantastic players show up out of nowhere. There's no coordinated development of specific kinds of players to fit into specific kinds of football philosophies and approaches and tactics and so on and so forth. But I think Eric Schell really needs to start to, hold down what his identity is, because they're going to need it, especially in their next game against the Tunisians, who showed that they are extremely formidable opponents.
Bees, Ademola Lookman getting on the board, that's a really good sign, certainly for Nigeria. He's been very inconsistent at Atalanta this season. How important is it for him, and how much do you think he could be that main man for Nigeria at AFCON if they're able to get deep into this competition?
Well, they needed him last edition, didn't they? They needed him last edition. He carried the nation, I think, all the way to the final. In the absence of the goals or the contributions that you generally see from Victor Osimhen, he contributed in different ways, certainly. But this man in the last edition was the one who was on the score sheet consistently. And if he continues to score goals like this out of nowhere, like he did today, I think Nigeria absolutely have a chance. And I think he's the only player who can fill Osimhen's shoes when he's not necessarily finding the target. And I think if both he and Osimhen start firing on all cylinders in unison at the same time, all the rest of us contenders will certainly have a big issue.
Mbizo, when I look at the quality from Senegal in their win over Botswana, it was quite remarkable. I think they took 17 shots on target in that game, which is the most by any team since 2010. Again, I mentioned the stat earlier on. Mane, I think he had 6 shots on target himself. You can go through the starting 11, and every single one of those individuals is at a top club, and they're playing pretty much close to the top of their ability. But as a group, Senegal are actually playing some very good football. They're very dangerous. They've got an excellent bench as well. Exactly how talented are they for you? How far can they go? Are we underestimating Senegal in this competition? Could they potentially be the winners of this competition?
I think whoever might be underestimating Senegal hasn't really quite been paying attention to African football over the last couple of seasons. Yes, they didn't perform as well as they would have wanted to in the last AFCON, but not only the team sheet. I mean, you mentioned the team sheet is extremely deep. I mean, as close to a super team as you can get, I believe, especially on the African continent, I believe. And they're just an incredible blend of talented youth players and extremely experienced, top-class, world-class players, and they looked. The word I would use for them today was absolutely menacing. They were menacing. I think they played in a way that everyone expected Morocco to play. Of course, Morocco is another one of the favorites, but this Senegalese team checks every single box, and I think that I discussed it with a few members of the team as well, that they really need to just ask themselves, how badly do they want it? Because for me, they're far and away the best team, not just on paper, but in the display that they had today, they were the best team so far at this tournament, and they are extremely threatening. For me, it's just a question of how far they're willing to dig deep, because the talent is it's oozing out of every crack and crevice from this squad.
Yeah, and some of that attacking talent certainly comes from Nico Jackson. Making the move from Chelsea to Bayern seems like he's a bit more rejuvenated, even though he's kind of been in and out of the starting 11 in a lot of ways for Bayern, which is not really a surprise with the talent they have. He's in excellent form right now with that brace. What have you seen from him? How important do you think that move from Chelsea to Bayern was in his development?
Yeah, I was delighted for Nick Jackson today. I think that he's shown how important he can be to a very talented Senegalese side, and I think he is among those extremely talented players. And with regards to Bayern, I mean, I think the obvious bits are that it's an elite organization, one of the best in the world, one of the best in Europe, certainly. They're consistently challenging, obviously, for continental honors, and of course, Bundesliga. That's doesn't even need to be said. And the difficulty is, as you mentioned, he's not getting as many minutes as I would like to see him, and I'm sure as Senegalese fans and football proponents would like to as well, with limited time behind some seriously giant superstars. And again, with that modest output, you wonder how much that has made a difference to his contributions to Senegal. Perhaps it has, perhaps it hasn't, but I believe that with his talent, with his ability, any team he would have gone to in the world, he would have been able to bring those skills, bring those talents incorporate them to the Senegalese national team. I think moving forward, I would love to see him, no matter what his future holds, I would love to see him at a club where he's a key player, where he plays week in, week out as a starter. And I think in that context, we might see more of what we could refer to as form and development that can be incorporated into the Lions of Teranga.
Mbizo, did I hear you correctly just state that you think Senegal has the best squad in this competition? Do you really believe that over Morocco, over Egypt? I mean, there are so many different nations, Nigeria, that we could challenge you with. I mean, Senegal as a team, as a group, they're quietly going about their business, but are you saying they're better than Morocco?
I absolutely think they're better than Morocco, not just on paper, but in practice. And at least that's what I observed from the first couple of games. The teams were practically even when you consider their qualification brackets and so on. But the power, the pace, the technical quality, the tactical cohesion, they are balanced, like incredibly balanced midfielders. Almost all the players can attack and all of them can defend. In defense, they're just so unbelievable. Great goalkeeper, deep bench, and I was so impressed by their football today. Granted, with all due respect to our Southern African neighbors, they're not an incredibly large test. But Senegal, I didn't think Comoros was necessarily a large test either. But if we're going to compare the performances of these two, for me, favorites, then I think Senegal has certainly been the superior team, and I'm excited for what they're capable of with the rest of the tournament. However, the caveat is I said that about them last AFCON, and they bowed out at the quarterfinals. So again, it's up to Senegal to put their talents where it needs to be.
Don't try to rescue yourself now. We've got it on camera.
They're the best. No fear. No fear.
Yeah, but they went out in the round of 16, didn't they? I couldn't agree more, though. And Mbizo, thank you so much for taking a few minutes with us and imparting your knowledge.
Thank you so much for having me, gents. It's
Love
always
you, buddy.
a pleasure.
Take care.
Always a pleasure. Well, going back to what we had talked about on earlier in the show with DR Congo facing Benin, there was a potential handball in the box, but VAR wasn't working, and then they couldn't look at it. So it was not a potential penalty kick, and DR Congo ends up winning. Let's go to our rules analyst, Christina Unkel, her take on the situation.
Another interesting scenario in AFCON today as the referees find that VAR technology was not working at a moment of critical time that they needed it to make a determination as to whether or not a handling and penalty offense should be given. Many are crying, what is the protocol when the technology system goes down? And the VAR protocol specifically address that if the technology goes down, that the game can still and should still resume, in fact. VAR technology, similar to the referee's headphone microphone set, is just a tool for the referees to get game critical decisions correct, but it does not undermine the validity of the game or the decisions made by the referees on the field. So even though the technology has gone down, game must continue and the validity of the game continues as well. There are opportunities to wait and see if the technology comes down, but that must be within a reasonable time, and therefore the referees did have to continue with this decision. Many are crying that the game should be invalidated and should be played again, but that goes down to IFAB and determining whether or not, and here they've already taken that decision that VAR's technology broken down does not invalidate the game.
Yeah, just in a lot of ways, an unfortunate situation there with Benin not getting the opportunity to at least look at it because they're going to feel hard done. But then again, before VAR, it wouldn't have mattered.